Yo, what is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Got Next podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Baldwin, with my co-host, Donovan Moore.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We back at it, man. You know what time of year it is.
Absolutely. It's hoodie season. College football started today. You know
Yeah.
what time it is. Ben and Nate Ash back on the show with us, man. Say what's up, B.
What's up, fellas? We're awfully close. Just can't wait till it starts.
Exactly. I have drafted one half of my fantasy team so far. I'm excited, man. It's that time of year, you already know. So make sure you guys like and follow the socials, man, at the God Next Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. And today, man, we're going to be going through the AFC and ranking each team. We got some tiers for you guys. We're back on the tier maker today. So make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, all of that type of stuff. And without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Three-pointers. Outside jumper from three. The
All right, I'm going to try to share my screen. Cool. Can y'all see me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All righty. I'm going to go full screen for this one. All righty. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start out here with the Ravens. We'll start with Bennett, and we'll just go around, man. Where are you putting the Ravens on this tier list, B?
I'd say Super Bowl or bust. They lost the AFC Championship last year, and they're paying their quarterback top-tier money, and they signed the King, Derrick Henry. So it'd be awfully – I mean, I'm obviously not a Ravens fan. I'm the opposite of that, but – I'd be awfully disappointed if I were a fan of theirs and they didn't lift the Lombardi Trophy in February. I feel like it's a failed season.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, B. The Ravens, I feel like every year that Lamar's here for the future is going to be a Super Bowl or bust season when you're paying them top of the line money for sure. So I agree.
I honestly, guys, I felt like, and I'm not a Lamar fan, man, but I felt like last year was really going to be their year. So for it to not work out the way that it did, and then, you bring in Derrick Henry, which is, but at the end of the day, you were number one in the NFL last year rushing. So I don't see you can't really get much better than number one. So I don't know how much better that's going to make them. You got another year, Zay Flowers, which is good. I think he'll have a good standout year, but absolutely Super Bowl or bust. So yeah, I feel like we all agree there. So we can go ahead and move on. Next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, B.
I would say Super Bowl or bust with Joe Burrow back at the helm. I think, some might put him in that deep playoff run category because they, were last in the AFC North last year, but it had to do with, injuries. And they still had a winning record without Joe Burrow last year. For the most part of the year, they finished 9-8. So you'd think with him back, you're back to where you were competing with him, which was Super Bowl loss and then an AFC Championship loss the next year. So come close a couple times. If I were a Bengals fan, I'd be expecting the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm stuck in between deep playoff run and Super Bowl or bust for the Bengals. Just with the injuries Burrow has had these past couple of seasons, I'm going to put them, at least for me, in the deep playoff run category. Because as long as the Bengals make the playoffs, at minimum, they've made the AFC Championship with Burrow there. The AFC is really loaded. I'm stuck in. I'm gonna go deep playoff run for Bengals. They could be a Super Bowl or bust team, but I feel like a deep playoff run for them is still a successful season, especially with just the uncertainty with Jamar Chase still not having a deal yet. Burrow sometimes injury history, things of that nature. New offensive coordinator, so I'm gonna go deep playoff run for the Bengals.
Like most people are going to have the same issue here. I'm definitely in between deep playoff run and Super Bowl or bust. But I think I'm actually going to go Super Bowl or bust personally, just because, this is the year where they have, they're supposed to have a healthy Joe Burrow, a healthy Jamar Chase. And then last but not least, they got T. Higgins and his contract issues. It seems like he's going to play through it this year and on the franchise tag. But the likelihood of them having him next year isn't really the same. And I feel like losing a number one wide receiver when you already have Jamar Chase is a pretty big loss, honestly, because, that's a luxury to have a number two that's actually a number one. So I feel like with the roster currently the way it is and, with them having, being able to have a decent running back in Zach Moss, I think that they kind of do need to, make it far here. So I'm going to go Super Bowl or bust for the Bengals. B, this is your team, the Steelers, man. How do you feel about your team this year?
Not too good, to be honest with you, but I mean, and it's flattering in some ways that as a fan, never experienced a losing season, but I think we have fourth place written all over us if every team plays their best, which they probably won't, but if every team in our division plays their best, with it's an offensive league, and the Steelers by far got the worst offense in the AFC North. So I think, without further ado, they belong in the I wouldn't bet the house on it category. But obviously, if they figured out a way to the 7 seed like they did last year and a couple years before that, it wouldn't surprise me because it's kind of just what they do. But sorry about that. But that's just kind of what they've been over the last 2 years. And without good quarterback play, you can't really be anywhere above that category. I wouldn't bet the house on it.
Yeah, I agree with you, B. Nobody knows your team better than yourself, man. I wouldn't bet the house on it either for the Steelers. Besides the great coaching, like you said, offensively, there's a lot of questions there for the Steelers. I didn't really like the Arthur Smith hire either, because our problem wasn't really running the football. It was quarterback play, getting your playmakers on the perimeter involved. So I don't know how Arthur Smith will utilize that, but I wouldn't bet the house on it for the Steelers.
I think that's a great point, Dono. Hiring Arthur Smith when you're trying to use your offensive playmakers is probably not a good hire after what he did to Kyle Pitts. So, I wouldn't bet the house on it. Also, the QB play does not look great right now. Feel like what's the famous saying in football? You got 2 QBs, you got 0. So I feel like Justin Fields, he's really athletic. I feel like he raises the ceiling for the Steelers, and then Russell Wilson, man, you know what you're going to get, I feel like. So Justin Fields, I think, should start ultimately. But either way, I'm not betting the house on it. So next up, man, we got the Browns. How you feel about them, B?
So they have the potential, put it this way, they have potential of a deep playoff run, but they're also the Browns. Like, they've just constantly found out a way to screw it up. They've actually had a pretty damn talented team, if dating all the way back to 2019. So, I mean, you look at running back there, even though Nick Chubb's come back from an injury, they have a stacked running game because they have a great offensive line. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. And their defense, they got Myles Garrett, who I didn't think should have won Defensive Player of the Year. It should have been T.J. Watt, but nevertheless, he's probably the second best defensive player in the league after T.J. Watt, so that's a huge asset. And they got Denzel Ward, and I think overall they had the number 1 defense last year, right? It was them or the Chiefs in the regular season last year, or in the Ravens. So, I mean, AFC North is a stacked division full of defenses, by the way. But the Browns, they have the talent on their roster to have a deep playoff run, but it all comes down to that man, Deshaun Watson, and I do not trust him for a lot of reasons, and that's why I would put him in the I wouldn't bet the house on it category.
I'm going to have to go I wouldn't bet the house on it category as well for Cleveland, and I just say that because they actually didn't hit their stride as a team offensively until Joe Flacco came in. The first 2 years Deshaun Watson has been there. I know the first year he was coming off almost a season-long suspension, and then last year he was still looking pretty rusty. But it's like, if you show me that 2 years in a row, he might not be the same player he once was. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or whatever it is, and then combine that with Nick Chubb probably missing the first 6 to 8 weeks, still recovering from his knee injury. I wouldn't bet the house on it for Cleveland. Like you said, the AFC North that's a tough division. I think the Bengals were in 4th with 9 wins. So
could be the same thing this year.
Exactly. So that's definitely a tough division. I feel like it's between Cleveland and Pittsburgh for last place, but I wouldn't bet the house on Cleveland making too much noise.
No, Donald's absolutely right. I think that this team, they're just – I mean, they actually have had some really good rosters, man. Like, you think about, like, when Baker Mayfield was there, it's Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett still. Like, and then now it's just a different iteration with Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, these boys. But ultimately, man, I mean, it's hard to focus on football, when you're worried about getting massages from these different women around the world, man. So I feel like I don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to be better this year, because his mind's not on football ultimately. That boy's a freak, So, I wouldn't bet the house on it. Definitely not. So our next division in the AFC, man, B, we got the Dolphins up next. How do you feel about the Dolphins?
I'll give them a little bit more respect than the Browns and put them in a deep playoff run category. But you guys all know the saying in football: you'll usually go about as far as your quarterback will take you. And I think Tua is kind of shown he's a little worse than the Dakota Prescott of the AFC. That's my personal take on him. He's got Tyreek Hill. He's got a heavy arsenal of weapons. He's got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and he's got the two-headed monster in Raheem Mostert and the other name. Yeah. What is it one more time?
A-Chain, the King.
Yeah, he'd be getting hurt so much that his name becomes a little forgetful sometimes, even for me. But I had Mostert last year, so I knew the truth. But regardless, the Dolphins have a stacked offense, but they have Tua Tagovailoa, who I'm not disrespecting. He's good. He's probably, I don't want to say he's in between a Kirk Cousins and a Dak Prescott. He's kind of more like Kirk Cousins level, and that level of quarterback play will get you good stats. It'll make you look like a decent team in the regular season, but it's not getting you to a Super Bowl. So, like, I'll put them in deep playoff run because, with an explosive offensive like that, you can win a couple games. But all I've seen them do is get clapped by the Chiefs, get clapped by the Bills. Last year, late in the year, they got clapped by the Ravens, like 56-19 or something like that. It's like when they're playing the big dogs, they get their butts kicked. And I don't know how that's going to change this year, but if you all have different observations, I'd love to know. But deep playoff run for me, if everybody else in the AFC is just having an off day in mid-January, they might get to the AFC Championship game.
I would actually put the Dolphins in. I wouldn't bet the house on it category.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because the Dolphins have shown us they have what it takes to get to the playoffs. They just haven't shown us that they have what it takes to make a playoff run. So their issue is they'll get there as a wild card, then they'll play, as you mentioned, be one of those heavyweights like the Bills or the Ravens, something like that. It'll be a road playoff game. They got to go travel to the cold, and then it's a completely different team. The offense may not travel with them, or it's just not the same team we saw in the regular season, essentially. So that's why I would say I wouldn't bet the house on them. Hopefully they prove me wrong, but just up until this point, I just have to go off what I've seen from the Dolphins, and I wouldn't bet the house on them making a deep playoff run. I have them getting there, but winning some games is a different thing.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm going to go the same thing, brother. I would not bet the house on it. I see why B picked a deep playoff run, but it's like, you talked about their offense being explosive and stuff, but like I've only ever seen it in the regular season when they're playing the Panthers. I have never seen it in the playoffs when they're actually playing a tough team and, it's kind of cold outside. So I feel like they're 0-11, I think, in games where it's like 40 degrees or less. So
Miami, man.
They just have not proven the ability to win in adverse weather conditions and stuff. So yeah, I really can't. And that's really what all the playoffs are going to be. Once it hits January and the playoffs start, bro, it's like every team you're playing is elite for the most part, and it's going to be cold for the most part, no matter where you are, unless you're in Miami. So
yeah,
I pick you against these teams if you haven't proven you can win when it's cold outside. So.
And I don't disagree with you guys necessarily. By the way, I mean,
I get what you're saying for sure. Yeah. It's like their expectations. They're supposed to be a deep playoff run team based off their talent and their expectations, but will they do that? Is a whole other conversation.
I don't know. The offense is just gimmicky to me. Like they look really good against some teams, but like when they play an elite defensive team, they never look that explosive. To be honest. So, all right, next up we got the Patriots. Man, I don't think we need to waste too much time on this. Absolutely no chance.
No chance. They have a really good chance at the number one pick in 2025. I'll say that.
That's a good one, B. All right, next up, we got the New York Football Jets with Aaron Rodgers, man. Does a healthy Aaron Rodgers change your perspective on this team?
I want to say deep playoff run, and I'll put him in deep playoff run, but Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old, and the NFL still did nothing about that turf that they play on. So, a lot of people, like the 1 year the Niners didn't make at least the NFC Championship game in the last 5 years. They played the Giants and Jets in week 2 and 3 on the road. They lost half their roster on that field. So those turf fields are dangerous, and doesn't help that you have a 40-year-old quarterback with that too. But I think they just made life a little harder for the Dolphins because that's another, good quarterback in that division that's better than Tua. They could make it harder for the Bills as well because, they aren't an easy win on the schedule anymore. I think potentially Aaron Rodgers, you got to give him enough respect to say deep playoff run, but I'm not putting him in Super Bowl or bust because it is the New York Jets at the end of the day. And I think for most of our time watching football, they've been a clown organization, and nothing seemed to change about that last year when Rodgers got hurt. They were not prepared for that scenario, but they put all their eggs in that basket. It still seems like they are. They're still stacking the team. But then they also you see very very inept management by them. Like they trade for Hassan Reddick, and they're not working out a deal with him, so he wants a trade. It's like, why do you trade for him if you weren't going to give him a contract? It's like that's very bad management. Woody Johnson is a terrible owner. And one player, Aaron Rodgers, who's only got one championship, by the way, with a great organization. You know, I don't know if he is that great that he can force a Super Bowl in the Jets like Tom Brady did on the Bucs. So deep playoff run, I'll give him that respect because they do have talent.
I agree. The Jets have a very talented roster, and I do. Besides the Hassan Reddick move, I do like the additions they made to their offensive line. They signed Tyron Smith, although he's injury prone. They used their first round pick on another offensive lineman, so they are trying to put the resources in place to protect Aaron Rodgers. They signed Mike Williams, and then they already had an elite defense. So I would definitely go deep playoff run for Jets because they still managed to win 7 games or so last year with a quarterback carousel. So as long as Rodgers is healthy, I don't see why they can't. But as you also said, it's the Jets. So, but I'll say deep playoff run for the Jets because they have what it takes to, I think, get there and make some noise. They got the defense, you got the elite quarterback, receiver, and then they still got Breece Hall too. The Jets have a solid team. So I'll go deep playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, if the roster around Aaron Rodgers wasn't so loaded, they definitely would be on. I wouldn't bet the house on it for me, but I mean, they have to be deep playoff run. I mean, what don't they have at this point? I feel like they beefed up their offensive line too, which was kind of one of their main weaknesses last year, other than the fact that Aaron Rodgers didn't really play outside of his first drive. So they got a lot going for him. Garrett Wilson, you know, all the weapons that B already talked about. So I definitely feel like they're gonna make some noise this year. Next up, we got the Buffalo Bills. They lost a lot in this offseason, but, you know, they still got Josh Allen. So is that enough to put them on the Chiefs tier, B?
So not on the Chiefs tier just because they're 0-3 against them in the playoffs. They are very good against them in the regular season, but obviously that doesn't matter. I'm still going to put them in the Super Bowl or bust category because the city of Buffalo is bleeding for a Super Bowl, and they still have that man Josh Allen who – let's be honest, Stephon Diggs didn't really do anything the whole second half of the year for them last year. And Josh Allen scored, I think, 15 rushing touchdowns. I know he has this bad game, so he'll give away like 2 games a year by just throwing hella picks. But maybe with a less stacked receiving core, he won't be as crazy with the football or as erratic. I'm sure he will a couple times. But he's kind of on that, like, you know, Lamar, Joe Burrow, second tier quarterback in the AFC category. So I'm gonna put him as Super Bowl or bust because I think it's unacceptable for them to get worse. Like, you know, they've been in the divisional round the last 4 years. One time they were in the AFC Championship. Like, they're winning a playoff game pretty much every year. So I think in their minds, they should still get the Super Bowl. But I wouldn't be surprised if you guys categorize them in the deep playoff run because they did lose a lot on both sides of the ball. But McDermott seems to always, you know, do well coaching the defense, and Josh Allen always ends up doing his thing, and they finish every season very strong if you've noticed over the last several years. So I put them in Super Bowl or bust still because unacceptable for it to be anything less.
I'm actually going to go Super Bowl or bust for Buffalo as well. I just feel like if we're holding Lamar and Joe Burrow to the standard of they're supposed to be an elite quarterback, you're getting paid top dollar, it's Super Bowl or nothing. So I feel like we got to treat Josh Allen the same. And as you stated already, B, they made the divisional round the last 4 years, made 1 AFC championship. So he's proven that he can win a playoff game or get to the AFC championship, but he needs to get to the Super Bowl. Like, he has to get over that hump. Now, the same way people, you know, say about Lamar, got to treat Josh Allen the same. So I say it's Super Bowl or bust for Buffalo.
Me personally, I had him in deep playoff run, but, you know, I got ruled out. You know, it's 3 of us, so it's 2-1. You know, but you know, when I look at the teams that's in the Super Bowl or bust, you got to just think about overall, man, the rosters, bro. Like, we're talking about rosters, like the Bills just don't match up with these other teams. Like,
I know what you mean.
You got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and these other guys on the Bengals, and then the Ravens have Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry now, Lamar Jackson, like. And then the Bills have Curtis Samuel.
I think Dalton Kincaid could be a beast.
You know what I mean? Like, Dalton Kincaid could be a beast, absolutely.
Yeah.
James Cook could be solid.
James Cook could be solid too, but it's just not on that level. Like, we're talking about Derrick Henry. We're talking about Jamar Chase. And then you got Curtis Samuel, Keon Cole. You know what I mean? So I think roster-wise, it's just not there. It's kind of the opposite of what I just said about Aaron Rodgers. I just don't like what's going on around Josh Allen, but ultimately, he's Josh Allen, so I do think that they will at least have a deep playoff run.
If there was like a category between the two, Super Bowl or bust and deep playoff run, I'd fit him in there.
Yeah, they'd be there for sure. Next up, we got the Tennessee Titans, guys. I don't know how long this should take. I'm going to put them here personally. I mean, how do you guys feel?
I don't disagree at all. I think your boy Dakota Prescott's a free agent next year. I would not be surprised if the Titans are are pouncing on that aggressively to overpay him because I do not think Will Levis is it. I think he's got an arm, but I don't think he's got anything else.
Yeah, the Titans are in between no chance, and I wouldn't bet the house on it. I mean, they got Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Hopkins. They got decent pieces out there. I just don't know about Will Levis and then new coaching staff. I just don't know. So I would say no chance because I just don't know much about their team.
They lost Derrick Henry. That's because they had going for them for all these years.
Yeah. I mean, if Dak want to go to Tennessee and be, Tony P and I mean, sure. I already saw that pairing though. That was awful all season. It was horrible. I mean, sure, that's what they want to do. But yeah, the Titans do have a lot of weapons. I'm not gonna lie. Calvin Ridley, D Hop. You guys mentioned the other running backs. I'm gonna put Tajay Spears in there as well. I think he can have a big year. But yeah, overall, I think that they'll be better than they were last year. But it's not saying much. So yeah, no chance. Next up, we got the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, is he due for a turnaround year, B?
I want to put some respect on Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson's names. I think they're both going to be there for a long time because let's face it, it's Jacksonville. Their whole history, they pretty much haven't had a quarterback besides Mark Brunell when they first started their franchise. And Trevor Lawrence is head and shoulders better than that. And they haven't really had a good coach since Tom Coughlin. And now they got Doug Peterson, a Super Bowl winning coach. So I think, when you pair up a good coach and a good quarterback, it's supposed to mean you have a chance. But if I'm really thinking about it, they don't really have a true number one receiver. They have Christian Kirk, but they lost Calvin Ridley, and they had Zay Jones last year, right? And he's gone on the Cardinals now. He's on the Cardinals now.
He got suspended too, I think.
And he got suspended.
He got suspended for 5 games.
But I do know they run the ball well at times, and I know they were playing really well last year before Trevor got hurt at the end of the year and started playing bad. So it's kind of like, do I want to put him a deep playoff run, or I wouldn't bet the house on it? Because I honestly would not bet the house on it. But with injuries in the AFC, they could probably somehow get a ticket to the AFC Championship and get mauled by the Chiefs. There is a chance. So because Trevor is better than Tua, but I wouldn't bet the house on Jaguars. I'm kidding. I'm kidding myself. I wouldn't bet the house on it.
Yeah, it's the same for me as well. I wouldn't bet the house on the Jaguars just after seeing them collapse after having the division lead for most of the season last year, and then losing a weapon like Calvin Ridley. I would kind of need to see how they shake back this year, but I just wouldn't bet the house on them as of right now because the AFC is just – I mean, we already got 4 teams ahead of them, and we still haven't gotten to, like we said, Houston yet. The Chiefs are in the category on their own, but, they'll be in the mix, but I just wouldn't bet the house on them.
Yeah, I think they'll be in the mix. They got some decent players. I mean, losing Calvin Ridley's pretty big, name-wise, but I feel like when they had Calvin Ridley, they weren't really using him anyway. So, I mean, that's not a huge game changer for me. They just didn't use him correctly. But, I mean, they still have Travis Etienne and a couple other guys. But, yeah, again, it's just not enough for me to believe. And then now they have, is it Gabe Davis? They used to be on the Bills.
Yep, you got Gabe Davis now. Yeah,
Gabe Davis, and you know how he is, man. He's super volatile. He's like Kyle Schwarber from baseball, MLB. He's run or bust. You know what I mean? He's either giving you the big plays or he's giving you literally nothing. So yeah, wouldn't bet the house on it with the Jags. Next up, man, we got the Houston Texans, man. I think this is the best team in Texas, if I'm gonna be honest with you. But B, how do you feel about them?
I can't disagree with you at this point, just based on the off seasons the 2 Texas teams had. But I think deep playoff run definitely for the Texans. I mean, I want to say Super Bowl or bust, but I don't think that kind of pressure applies on them yet because C.J. Stroud's only a sophomore and they have yet to make an AFC Championship in their history. So I think that is definitely due this year. If they don't do that this year, it's understandable because there are other teams. But then, they'll be one more year away from kind of getting some pressure inside the locker room to get something done because they definitely have the talent. The addition of Stephon Diggs is pretty lethal. So I definitely expect a deep playoff run out of them. And their defense is pretty good too. I mean, they definitely were playing well on defense towards the end of the year last year. And it looks like D'Amico Ryans is definitely one of the young up-and-coming head coaches in the game. So definitely deep playoff run.
I agree. I'm going to go deep playoff run for Houston as well. Like you said, B, they can't go in that Super Bowl or bust category yet because they're still just getting there, just scratching the surface of what they can be. But I feel like after this year, depending on what they do, then they'll definitely have Super Bowl expectations going forward. They got Joe Mixon, and they signed Danielle Hunter from the Vikings to go with Will Anderson, the defensive rookie of the year. And they still got Stingley. The Texans got a lot of solid pieces. You got Tank Dell coming back, Nico Collins. So, Yeah, they're definitely a deep playoff run type of team for sure.
Man, I think the Texans got a better chance than the Bills. If I'm being
I
honest,
was just kind of thinking that too.
that's why I'm like, I don't see how y'all put the Bills on Super Bowl or bust, but the Texans are down here.
I just say the Bills are on the Super Bowl or bust because of their playoff success of the last 4 to 5 years. So I just feel like when they're making the playoffs the last 4 or 5 years, but they're not winning the games, or they'll like get to the AFC Championship then lose. I just feel like with Josh Allen's contract and the expectations on him specifically, they're like a Super Bowl or bust team. Just with
and I'm kind of saying it for the same reasons. Like if the Bills have a worse year this year than they did last year, like there might be some drastic changes in that organization. Not to say there weren't just this past offseason. They pretty much have turned over their whole defense and their whole offense outside of Josh Allen. But I mean, maybe it's Sean McDermott's head on the chopping block if they don't win a playoff game this year. You know what I mean? So it's like I just think the pressure is an aspect of this ranking right here, and I think the pressure, the clock is ticking way more for them than it is for the Texans.
I don't know, man. Just when you think about the Bills' their success over the last couple of years, it was predicated off a lot of their roster being great and them having the number one receiver, legit Stephon Diggs. And now that's like their roster's on the way down, while the Houston Texans offense is on the way up, or their roster's on the way up. Bro, they have weapons everywhere. Like we don't even bring up Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz is still pretty damn good at tight end. So they got Dalton Schultz, they got Tank Dell, you got Stephon Diggs, you got Nico Collins. You got Joe Mixon. Your backup is Dameon Pierce. You know what I mean? So, bro, that roster is insane. I think that there's no way that they shouldn't be Super Bowl or bust. They are for me at least, but, obviously I got outruled. So, all good here. Next up, we got the Colts. And honestly, I was going to put them on no chance rebuilding, but then I thought about the roster some more. They actually do have a chance. So, B, where do you think that they land on this tier list?
I think they go on the I wouldn't bet the house on it. Because they kind of see him on par with those other teams in that category. They have had bad luck with quarterback issues dating all the way back to Peyton Manning. Honestly, he left to go to Denver because they thought he was done. He rebuilt himself in Denver and ended up winning a Super Bowl. Andrew Luck, obviously retired because of injuries with no offensive line. And then they kind of went quarterback carousel for a while with Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, all didn't work out. And now they have AR, but he seems to be injury prone too. So, I mean, I'm going to put him in that category. Because I also think Jim Irsay can be a dangerous owner at times. That Jeff Saturday hire from a couple years ago still has me questioning him and his ability to make decisions.
Wasn't that last year?
That wasn't last year, but 2022, the year before. So I still this guy's capable of doing some dangerous stuff if you do something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't bet the house on the Colts. Them and the Texans, I remember they were essentially a playing game with each other away, the Colts, from making the playoffs with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Although we saw a small sample size from Anthony Richardson last season, I feel like the Colts will use him correctly because their coach is the same one that helped elevate Jalen Hurts' game and get the Eagles to the Super Bowl, their Super Bowl year. So I think the Colts could definitely maybe be in the running in their division maybe, but I wouldn't bet the house on them because Houston has made a lot of improvements to their roster, as we mentioned already.
For sure. And I think the Colts have some guys. I think that they could probably finish a little bit better than the Jags maybe. They got AR, Jonathan Taylor, man. I think that with them getting Zach Moss out of there, I feel like they're trying to put him back in that bell cow role. So I feel like he'll be good there. And then they still got as well. So yeah, I feel like they got the baseline of the weapons they need. They're going to need some extra performances for some other guys and maybe their defense. But yeah, I think the Colts they're right there in the mix, man, and they could shock some people this year. Next up, man, we got the Chargers. Roster doesn't look great. They still got Justin Herbert. Harbaugh is obviously there now. Where do they land on the tier list for you?
So kind of like the Jaguars, they have an elite coach and what we think is an elite QB. So I trust the vision. I trust what Harbaugh is trying to build. He's trying to take care of the offensive line before he gets the skill player positions down, which I think is a great vision. But let's face it, they're throwing to you and me this year. They don't have any receivers out there, so they're not. I think with good coaching, they could squeak out 9-8, possibly maybe 10-7, but I doubt that. But so I wouldn't bet the house on it. But I think good for the Chargers that after 10 failing head coaches, they finally get themselves an elite one. Don't waste the quarterback like Justin Herbert's career on some sorry ass coaches. But Dean Spanos is a terrible owner. So if I were him, I'd let Jim Harbaugh make every single decision for that organization, which I think he is. I think that was part of the deal to make him a head coach there.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't bet the house on the Chargers, but John Harbaugh, is it Jim or John? That's the coach.
Jim. Jim's
Oh,
the Chargers
yeah.
coach.
Okay, yeah. So Jim Harbaugh is a really great coach. I feel like he's probably going to try to build the Chargers like how he did with San Francisco. Have a great offensive and defensive line, and like you said, let everything else fall into place. I don't know if it'll happen this year, but I think next year we can expect some better things from the Chargers. They still have Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, although Bosa usually is injury prone, but they still do have decent players on the defensive side of the ball. Not really sure offensively what their plan is because I know they signed J.K. Dobbins, but he gets hurt almost every year, even though he's very talented. They got Blake Corum from Michigan. Or is he on the Rams?
No, he's there.
He's on the
Rams. I am smashing Gus Edwards, Tennessee. Gus Edwards, I feel like you know Jim Harbaugh gonna run that football, brother. I think Gus Edwards.
But yeah, I got the Chargers and wouldn't bet the house on it. They just offensively they don't have enough, but I feel like their offensive line will be improved, but I don't think their weapons are good enough just yet.
Oh yeah, I'd have to agree. I'm also in the minority that believes Justin Herbert is not a top 10 QB. So I feel like I want to see it. I got to see it. I feel like he gets a lot of the potential, and I feel like that's why a lot of people put him in top 10. But it's like at this point, we haven't seen it yet, so I feel like he can't be put in top 10 until we see it. He hasn't done anything more than I'd say Jared Goff has done or Dakota Prescott has done. A lot of these mid guys. I think I've seen more out of Tua Tagovailoa sometimes than I've seen from Justin Herbert consistently. So I just got to see more. That's all, and I feel like this is a good opportunity for him to prove that even without the elite receivers, that he's still an elite QB. So next up, man, we got the Broncos, a team I'm actually low-key excited about. I'm a big Bo Nix guy, kind of a fan of that guy, so I feel like they might be able to do something this year. B, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I almost kind of want to give them the respect to put them in. I wouldn't bet the house on it. Realistically, though, they have a rookie QB, so they do have no chance if we're trying to be realistic with this. But I mean, I expect Sean Payton to be more satisfied with Bo Nix in his rookie year than he was with Russell Wilson last year. And as far as their defense goes, they did let up 70 points at the beginning of last year, and they seemed to kind of right the ship towards the end of the year. But still, you can't trust the defense that lets up 70 points. And I don't know if they made a ton of changes to that. So overall, kind of like I like where they're going, but they're still rebuilding. Let's face it. They traded Jerry Jeudy, who wasn't that good, but they have Cortland Sutton. I don't know who else they really have to throw the ball to right now. So they have no chance, but I think they'll be better than the Patriots, if that says anything.
Yeah, I would say rebuilding for the Broncos as well. Because last year was Sean Payton's first year there, so that should kind of be the rebuilding year, the first year with a new coach. But I feel like they were just kind of set back with the whole Russell Wilson thing and then just uncertainty in other positions or areas. So I feel like this year is another rebuilding year for them as well. Receiver-wise, I mean, Cortland Sutton is still solid, but Bo Nix is an unknown. I think he may be good, but we don't know what their offensive line is like, other things like that. So I'm going to put this as a rebuilding year for Denver.
Cool. Last but not least is me. Obviously, I got outruled here, so they're going to be in no chance. But I think Javonte Williams, as their running back, could have a big year here. I've heard some good things out of training camp about him and his role going forward. Cortland Sutton, man, he's just solid. Like I feel like he's just gonna be a factor. Like no matter who's there. Like even with Russell Wilson there, man, he was still like low key smashing in fantasy last year. And I think that he has an even better opportunity to do it here. With no Jerry Jeudy there. So fantasy wise, it's some good pieces here. But yeah, overall in the season wise, yeah, no chance. They're definitely rebuilding. We're gonna save the obvious team here for last. We're gonna go with the Raiders here. They got Devontae Adams. I mean, is that enough for you guys? Is that Super Bowl or bust?
You know what they got? They got Devontae Adams. They got Max Crosby. But you know what else they got? They got no chance.
Yeah. You know what else they got? No chance.
No chance. But they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. I hate to say it, but they're not going to be that good. They're going to be cheeks.
Yeah, I mean, the best I could give the Raiders is I wouldn't bet the house on it, but that would be doing them a favor, honestly. Yeah, I don't think they have a chance.
Again, I'm big on names, guys. As far as football names, I don't know a better football name or too many better football names than Brock Bowers. All right, because I heard Sam Laporta last year. If I would have heard Sam Laporta's name before the draft, I would have drafted Sam Laporta. His name just sounds like he's going to be a dog. So Brock Bowers sounds like he's going to be a dog. I'm buying into the Brock Bowers stuff at the very least. But yeah, Raiders trash. Who's their QB? Is it Gardner Minshew right now?
It's Gardner Minshew. Probably could be Aiden O'Connell at some point, but
It'll be Aiden O'Connell at some point. I can almost guarantee that. But he's not very good either. So trash. And last but not least, it's actually crazy, man. We had to make a tier just for this team because there's nobody on this team's level. I mean, what do you guys have to say about the Chiefs, real quick, man, before we wrap up?
I mean, it'd be nice to see someone be able to beat them, but especially in the AFC, I just haven't seen it. Like, it's almost embarrassing at this point. Like, they had their worst regular season that we're gonna ever see them have last year, and they still go to the Super Bowl and win it. Travis Kelce is still the best tight end. He might not have the best stats throughout the year because he's getting up there in age, but when they need him, he's gonna be better than anybody else. And obviously, Mahomes can make something out of nothing. And their defense is elite now. On top of that, Chris Jones, that dude is a game wrecker. Like, it's absurd how good they have 3 top 10 players in the league. Like, and they have coach in the league, best defensive coordinator. Like, there's not a lot of answers to the Chiefs, to be honest with you. That's all I got to say.
It was kind of bad that they lost L'Jarius Sneed. He actually went to the Titans as well, which is crazy.
All that, yeah.
Titans made a lot of the difference. But the Chiefs, I think the only thing I really have to say about them, would they be the first team to ever three-peat if they won this year? So, I mean, I feel like they're chasing history, so they're definitely going after something special. But, yeah, they deserve to be in a category of their own. They're clearly a dynasty. It's not much to say about them. They're just a great team.
I got a couple things here, man. Obviously, Donald talked about it. No other team is three-peated, so I feel like they're going to be motivated to three-peat this year. But on top of that, man, they've got disrespected kind of like all offseason, to be honest with you. The top 100 that all the players vote on came out. Tyreek Hill wins it, and then Patrick Mahomes is number 4. So, like, I know Mahomes looks at that, and I know he keeps receipts. So I know he's looking at that like there's no way. Like 4? That's actually crazy. So the disrespect's been there all offseason as well. They got Hollywood Brown, who actually is injured now for 4 to 6 weeks, I believe. So go draft Xavier Worthy if you have not on fantasy, man, because he got at least 6 weeks, man, just to be one of the main wide receivers next to Rashee Rice. But yeah, outside of that, I think the Chiefs have a great opportunity to be here and make some history. So I think that they'll do just that.
Do you guys think their wide receivers will be? Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead. I just want to get that.
I was going to ask, for fantasy purposes, you guys think their wide receivers are going to be more consistent this year in the regular season, actually catch balls? Because that was a big problem for them last year when people almost doubted their Super Bowl hopes, but the wide receivers came through in the playoffs. But do you think they'll actually be like good this year, like productive?
I mean, I feel like if you're going from McCole Hardman and Sky Moore to Xavier Worthy now, and who's the other guy, Rashee Rice, and then Travis Kelce, and then Hollywood Brown comes in like later in the season. I mean, they have to catch more balls, right? I feel like
I think they might lean on the run game more. They might
think so.
On Pacheco.
That's true. Yeah, because now they got a bell cow too. Because before they used to have a committee, and now they got legit Pacheco now. So they're main guys. So somebody can lean back on. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today's tiers. I know you guys saw the little preview that we had the NFC for next week, man. So make sure you guys tune in next week. We're gonna be ranking the NFC, and yeah, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, all that type of stuff. Follow us on the socials at the Got Next Podcast, and we'll catch y'all next week, man.